Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. How are you? What have you been up to? Have you done anything fun? Have you been outdoors? Have you been in the woods? Have you been on the water? I can't say have you been on the ice, because I put out a call last week. I said, hey, those of you in the North Country, those of you driving around, have you seen any ice yet? And I talked to a couple of people, said, no, we've been driving all across the Yup, and we haven't seen any fishable ice yet at all. So I can't say, have you been on the ice? But I can say, have you been in the field? Have you been in the woods? Have you been on the water? Have you been doing anything fun here in our great state of Michigan? I, unfortunately, once again, have not. Man, I had high hopes of getting out hunting. 2 weeks ago I said, well, I got lots of time. And I'll be able to get out and, do some late season hunting. But then things kept getting in the way. Life. You know how it goes, right? Last week, I was all set. I was going to hunt Sunday evening. I was going to go out to the lease property. I was going to sit in that Wraith 270 see-through ground blind over one of our food plots. And I was going to hope and pray that a big old doe was going to come in there, and I was going to be able to put her down with that 350 Legend. Well, sometimes things change, right? So I went to church Sunday morning, made our usual Costco run after church. That's part of our becoming a tradition. And I'm driving through town at, thankfully 35 miles an hour, and boom, grind. It felt like the wheel fell off the truck. So I was able to pull off to the side of the road, and yes, indeed, the wheel did pretty much fall off the truck. An upper ball joint broke loose. And when that happens, you can't drive your truck. Now, I've been driving 50 years in a lot of different vehicles, including a lot of old junkers and jalopies when I was younger. And I've never had that happen, thank God. And thankfully, it happened in town at a slow speed. Because just the night before, we've been driving south on I-75, coming back from a family party up north, several hours after dark, at normal highway speeds. Imagine what if it would have happened then. So I was able to get it fixed. My friends at Garber got me up and running, and I said, look, how does that happen? Why does it happen? Can you see it coming? Can you prevent it? Nope, just one of those things that sometimes happen. You can't prevent it. You can't look for it. It just happens. So anyway, I was not able to get out hunting. But I do have, hopefully, unless I lose a wheel on the other side of the truck, by the time you hear this show, I will have been back out hunting again. It's just a matter of principle at this point that I want to shoot a doe. It's like, how do you go through an entire deer season in Michigan and not shoot a doe? I got friends and buddies knocking down, 6, 7, 8 does. And I can't find one big doe to shoot. But I'm still working on it. Have you seen the pictures online of these big, beautiful Michigan elk that people are putting down in this second, I think it's the last elk hunting season for the year? People, I post these pictures and it amazes me that people say, I didn't even know we had elk in Michigan. Yes, we do. We have a beautiful, vibrant, viable Michigan elk herd. It's just about impossible to get a tag, but they're out there. Which, a reminder, this is, in my opinion, the best way to get an elk tag is to apply for the Pure Michigan Hunt. The deadline for that is coming up, December 31st, $5. You can apply online or at any license agent. You can apply multiple times. And if you win a Pure Michigan Hunt, because there are 3 winners, you get a bull elk tag. Now, I'm going to win one of them. I say that every year, and every year I firmly believe it. And actually, wouldn't it be something if I actually did win it? Because people would say, oh, Avery, you got an in. I don't have an in. But I'm going to win one of those. So there's still 2 spots you can still 2 spots available. Michigan.gov/DNR. Apply for your license there. $5. Some great fishing going on right now. I was doing a behind the mic segment here in the studio before the show. And folks were telling me that Lake St. Clair River is on fire for walleye right now. That Saginaw Bay is on fire right now. The Saginaw River on fire right now. By the way, the river will not close next spring. It'll stay open. That'll be interesting. Also, we were talking about the consent decree negotiations, which is a little change over what we've been working on before. Opens up some area, a lot more gill nets. I feel like the DNR or whoever the state who was negotiating on behalf, I feel like they should have been negotiating on behalf of the sport fishermen. I feel like they let us down on that one. I really do. Very disappointed. Nobody, I shouldn't say nobody. I don't question the tribe's right to be able to fish. But really? I just think we got the short end of the stick on this one. Also, I learned during my Behind the Mic segment this morning, I must have been really out of touch the last couple of weeks. I don't feel like I have been, but apparently I was. They said, hey, Avery, what do you think of Shannon Lott taking over the DNR? I'm like, Shannon Lott taking over the DNR? Who is Shannon Lott and what happened to Dan Eichinger? I didn't even know this, that the governorette, the woman who was going to fix the damn roads and didn't, who is still in charge. Yeah, anyway. She moved Dan Eichinger over from the head of the DNR over to Eagle. And Shannon Lott, who was, I think, number 2 at the DNR, has stepped up to become the director of the DNR. I didn't even know that. So people say, what do you think of that? I don't have a reaction to it yet because I didn't even know it. Oh, what else? Even though I haven't been able to get out hunting, I was able to go on a deer track the other day. I got a phone call that said, hey, I shot a buck. We're looking for some help. Can you come on out? I said, absolutely. That is always so much fun. Looking for blood trail, looking for animals. Of course, while you're out there, you get a chance to see all the rubs that are still out there, the scrapes that are still out there. You know, this so-called second rut, this December rut, man, from what I saw the other day, it's going. I mean, there were fresh rubs, fresh scrapes everywhere. That's always a lot of fun, isn't it? What else? We had a wonderful Wednesday night live at Dixie Dave Minar's restaurant, Oscar and Joey's Roadhouse in Birch Run. Sent him off with a big party, a big send-off. That was a lot of fun. Dave will be joining us on this week's show, by the way. Coming up after the break, speaking of this week's show, Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR talking about our Michigan elk herd, this late season elk hunt. Then Paul Pirone of Versaskins. They've got a big sale going until the end of the year. 40% off. Elliot Schaefer of the Michigan Wildlife Council wraps up the first hour. In hour number 2, I'm going to check in with a friend of mine, good friend of mine, Tim Roller. He used to be a fishing guide on the Manistee River. In fact, one of his clients caught a world record brown trout there maybe 10 years ago or so now. A world record brown trout. He's also an avid deer hunter. I want to talk to him, Tim Roller, about hunting the late season, also about steelhead fishing, how water temp affects steelhead fishing. Nick Green of MUCC will join us as well. We're going to talk about this change in leadership at the DNR and the new consent decree mandate that puts more gill nets out there in the Great Lakes. And then this week's Ask Avery segment, answering some questions that I've had people ask me. I'm just thinking in my mind here. I might do an audible there and change that up a little bit. And then hour number 3, Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors joins me to talk about predator hunting. Josh is he is a master, especially predator hunting after dark. We'll talk about that. And then wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar will join me once again. And by the way, Dave will continue to join me, even though he's retiring and he's closing the restaurant. He has agreed to join me each week here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. A reminder, we do a Wednesday night live every night on my social media outlets. That's a chance for you and I to talk directly here on the radio show, right? It's me talking and you listening, and we can't interact. On my live streams, I do a behind the mic every Wednesday morning at 8:45 here from the radio studio. And then every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, we do a Wednesday night live. We will give away a ham for the holidays right on through the first of the year, courtesy of Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand Meats and the Grillo family. And it's your chance to join me. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Feel free to reach out to me. Send me your photos, your pictures, your questions, your comments, your criticisms. Send me your stories, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That is the best way to get in touch with me. We'll take a break. When we come back, Chad Stewart of the DNR talking about the Michigan elk herd right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. You know, you can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WZTK in Alpena. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ, 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. The fishing in front of Linwood Beach Marina right now is hot, hot, hot. Big walleye, really big walleye. I spent the whole summer out there chasing 15 to 18-inch fish. I talked to a guy the other day. He said they're throwing back anything over 6 pounds and just keeping 5 pounds and under. The folks at Linwood Beach say they will keep their launch ramp open as long as the ice allows. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. I've been getting some pictures sent to me. And the best way, you can send them to me in a private message on Facebook, or you can send them to me in an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Beautiful pictures of beautiful Michigan elk with smiling hunters sitting over them. And I find it interesting that often when I post those pictures, people will comment, I didn't even know we had elk in Michigan. Well, we do. We have a very viable, vibrant Michigan elk herd. Chad Stewart is a biologist with the DNR. He's our big game specialist, which means he gets to handle whitetails, which is a job I wouldn't wish on anybody. And he also gets to deal with moose and elk. And today we want to bring him on to talk about the Michigan elk herd. Chad, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Do you hear that as well from people? Man, I didn't even know we had elk.
Yeah, and we've been trying to work really hard over the past couple of years to try to raise awareness that yes, we do have elk. We actually have a program called Elk University where we've developed some grade school type information about elk in Michigan and make it available to elementary school teachers. I'm sorry, like secondary school teachers. And, we actually got that program in front of 26,000 students over a 6-year period. So even though people like adults now might not realize that we have elk in Michigan, hopefully we're trying to raise a younger generation that is aware that we have elk in Michigan and what that means for us.
Well, they are native to this state, but then they were wiped out years ago. The department brought them back. It took a couple of attempts to reestablish that herd, didn't it, Chad?
Yeah. We had a couple events that happened, but ultimately we did get the elk herd established, and we've had it established for over 100 years now. And it's kind of gone through different cycles and iterations. I know at one point there was some over harvest periods that occurred, really early in its tenure here with Michigan, in the reintroduction tenure. But lately we've been had a very stable elk herd in Michigan, and it's something that we're really proud of. In fact, I was able to pull some numbers because we're going through a elk management plan update. And Mike, did you know that over the past 10 years, hunters in Michigan have taken over 1,700 elk out of our current population? And to put that into perspective, our current population is about, 1,200, plus or minus, a couple hundred. So, that's the definition of sustainable management when you're able to take 1,700 elk over a 10-year period and out of a population of about 1,200.
And you guys are happy with this number. This seems to be about the right size herd, doesn't it?
For the area that it's distributed in, yeah. Actually, we're actually trying to reduce the elk herd a little bit based on our management plan goals. We are seeing some instances of landscape damage to honestly having a few too many elk in certain locations. But the number of general complaints about elk in that area have been dwindling over the past couple years, and that's partly due to some of our mitigation efforts as well. But there are certainly individuals that want more elk and want more elk in different places. But, from our agency perspective, we're pretty comfortable with the number that's there and the distribution or the range that we have available right now.
I've got to think an animal the size of an elk does have an impact on the habitat, especially if they get into that agricultural. You think about what a whitetail can do. Elk must be able to do more. Plus, I got to believe that elk don't really pay much attention to barbed wire fences either.
No, they kind of go where they want to go. And yeah, and you factor in the herd sizes that you can get with elk. It doesn't take long for a herd of 20 or 30 animals of that size to get into an area and potentially cause some damage. So that's why we're very sensitive to, overall numbers and private land conflicts and try to manage those numbers is within a specific sort of window or range. And I think for the most part, we've been pretty successful at doing that.
How do you know how many elk there are? Pigeon River is a pretty good sized piece of property.
Yeah, it sure is. And there's a lot of science that goes into it. So, but every 2 years we do an aerial survey. And we've got some researchers that are way smarter than I am and much more able to communicate how these, siteability models work. But the bottom line is we fly transects over, the elk range. We estimate or we observe how many elk we see, and then there's what we call a siteability index, which sort of corrects for that number. So we know that when we fly over, we're not going to see every single elk. So it's not just a simple count, but we have to sort of correct for that. So we always know that the number is going to be a little bit higher. And we try to do that in a way that we're not going to be double counting elk, over frequent time. So, the methodology is published and gone through the peer review process. So we feel comfortable with it. And our estimates have been pretty tight for the most part. Last year, there was a wider confidence interval that gave us a little bit more uncertainty, and there were some variables that go into place that attributed that. But overall, the number was pretty consistent with where we've been in the previous years.
Years ago, we flew a chopper over the Pigeon River about the same time you guys were doing a survey, just to show people from the air what this looks like. And it's surprising how hard it is to spot an animal that big in certain situations.
Yeah, part of the siteability index is, it's really easy to see a herd of 30 elk that are bedded in a field or along the edge of a wood line. That's really easy to see. What's really challenging is to pick out, one animal that's sitting or two animals that are spaced out in the woods as you're flying over. Or if, they get into any sort of conifer cover, it's almost impossible to see them. So that's why we have these siteability corrections that go into play. that really influence our overall estimate, because we just can't do a simple count, because it can be really challenging to pick up some of those individual animals.
How big are Michigan elk, Chad?
You're looking at, anywhere from, some of the bulls, you can get up to 500 to 600 pounds. Some of the cows, you're getting into that 400-pound range. So, needless to say, if you're successful at taking, or getting drawn for one, there's a really good chance that you're going to be successful in taking one, because our success rates for drawn hunters generally eclipse 80%. But if you get drawn, there's a really good chance that you're going to be having a lot of elk meat in your freezer at the end of the year.
Yeah, you're gonna want to buy another freezer, I think.
Or get a lot of friends that like elk. And the thing is, if you get a elk on the ground, you're going to have a lot of friends.
You're going to need a lot of friends, that's for sure, to get them out of there.
You're definitely going to need that, because it's not like a whitetail where you're just going to field dress it and drag it out, for sure.
Real quick, and I'm gonna change directions on you, and I apologize for not giving you a heads up. The Michigan moose herd. Now, how does our moose herd in the Yup compare to our elk herd in the northern lower?
It's still similar in that, the core moose herd is fairly condensed, and it's in that area just sort of west of Marquette. And we're actually going to be doing a moose survey this winter, and it's the first time we've been able to do a moose survey in a couple years. So we're excited about that. Of course, we have moose that are spread out across all of the UP or most of the UP, whereas the elk herd is fairly concentrated in one area. In the UP, we have our moose herd that's concentrated west of Marquette, but then we have stragglers, throughout most of that range. Numbers are really hard to estimate when they're spread out that thin. But that core area, we've estimated around 500 a couple years ago. So it's not as prolific as our elk herd, but at the same time, they're still holding on pretty well, and we're happy to have them.
And before we let you go, I'm going to have people mad at me if I don't follow up on whitetails. As you look back on the firearms season, do you have numbers? Do you have a sense for how it went yet, Chad?
Yeah, one of the great things with the new harvest reporting system is that we have real-time data. And to be fair, this is only reported deer. We don't know what the actual harvest is, because we can't pretend that 100% of individuals are reporting. But overall, the numbers are very similar to what we would expect it to be, like proportionally. And if everything sort of holds up, I think it's pretty confident in saying that Michigan hunters really adopted this new harvest reporting system really well this first year. So as of this morning, we had over 276,000 deer reported through this new system. To put that into perspective, we have about 400,000 deer that we estimate are harvested each year. I would anticipate that we'll probably end around 300,000 deer being reported once we get through the late antlerless season. So really fantastic results for the first year.
So if I heard you right, it sounds like roughly 3/4 of the hunters that harvested a deer actually reported them online?
That's sort of my best guess right now, and we're going to try to hone down on that number with our postseason deer survey at the end of the year, and really come up with an estimate of compliance. But just sort of eyeballing it here and now, based on what I know with previous harvest, I think a 70 to 75% compliance rate is very much a realistic estimate.
Did you get a chance to get out, Chad?
Yeah, I have gotten out. I've been busy since the firearm season took hold, but I was able to fill a tag in archery season, and then unfortunately I lost a blood trail on one early in archery season. So that one still sticks with you, but I think it happens to everybody.
It does happen to everybody, Chad. I appreciate you. Listen, I appreciate you jumping on at the last minute. You're a lifesaver, and I thank you.
Happy to do it, Mike.
All right, Chad Stewart of the DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR. I say lifesaver because I had somebody else scheduled, and they got sick at the last minute. So I'm looking at that thinking, who do I know that can talk about Michigan elk? Ding, 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 ding. Chad Stewart can, if he's available, and he was. Michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Paul Pirone, the owner of Michigan-based VersaSkin, says, well, he says just change your skin for the season you're in, but he also says right now is the time to do that, and we'll find out why after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by MUCC's On the Ground program. OTG is a program to improve habitat for fish and wildlife across the state. For details, check out the Michigan United Conservation Club's website. It's mucc.org. That's mucc.org. And a reminder, if you want to sign up to become an MUCC member, like I am, and you've never become a member before, you can save 25%. Go to the website, mucc.org. Use the promo code Mike, all caps, and you can save 25%. So I was talking earlier about my deer hunting season is not over yet. I'm still out there, still trying to get it done. I'm not frustrated. I'm considering it a challenge at this point. But the thing about this late season is, if you're near a food source, it can be a very, very effective and productive time to hunt. But it's going to be cold. I am wearing Michigan-based VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. I like it because it's warm, it's windproof, it's water-resistant, and it keeps me comfortable. And you're going to want to be comfortable if you're going to be out there this time of year. Paul Pirone is the man behind this concept of VersaSkins, and he says right now is a great time not only to change your skin, but a great time to save some money while you're at it. Paul, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Mike. I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hey, first of all, congrats on that big southern Michigan buck you shot during the firearm season.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Yeah, that was a blessing. That's the first time I've harvested a whitetail buck on opening day. So it was a good hunt, and very thankful for it.
And not just an opening day buck, but a big opening day buck.
Yeah, it was a good buck. He was one of the mature ones in the area that we'd been seeing, and he was actually a 6.5-year-old buck when we aged him. So yeah,
wow.
We're very thankful for it.
Paul, how did you come up with this concept behind VersaSkins of just snapping on and zipping on an outer layer to change the camo pattern?
You know, several years ago, Mike, I wanted to start snow hunting, and for predators and for goose, and there was nothing in the market that would allow me to simply, pull something over my existing product, and so. I wanted something that was lightweight, easy to use, easy to transport. And so we simply, took some existing suits and gutted one of the items and, started moving some snaps and zippers and buttons around and worked with a local wedding gown seamstress in Davison, came up with our first prototype. And we kind of just snowballed it from there, and that's how we came up with the VersaSkins product, the VersaSkins idea.
Well, it's one of those things when you look at it now that it's in existence and in production, you go, "Oh my goodness! Why didn't somebody think of this before?" It's so obvious, but it's not obvious until somebody comes up with it, Paul.
Yeah, appreciate that, and we get that at many of the shows and the different things we attend across the nation. People are like, "Oh man, I thought of that," or I've got something like that in my garage that I kind of mess around with, or, why didn't I think of that, right? So we just actually took the thoughts and did some prototypes, and now we're in production, and currently we have product in 28 states and Canada.
Wow. Congrats to you on that one, Paul. The best way to get VersaSkins at this point, I think, is online for now, right?
Online only. There's some new things coming where we might be in some local retail stores in Michigan. But right now, this is our 5th year of selling, and we are still only online, trying to keep our costs to a minimum so that we can pass all the savings on to our customers.
Well, and speaking of savings, you got something pretty big going on right now, Paul.
Mike, we do. This is the biggest sale we've ever had in our 5 years of selling. We've got a 40% off the entire store. A lot of companies will offer the Black Friday deal, the Cyber Monday, the early Christmas specials. we decided to just start it on Black Friday and run it all the way to the new year and give the consumers a full 6 weeks to shop. That way they can decide, a lot of people will come and look and then they'll come back and shop, but they missed the small windows. We wanted to just open it up for the entire holiday season, 40% off the entire store, no matter what you buy.
Wow. That's pretty deep discount right there. And one of the things I like about you guys too, Paul, is you make product in sizes for bigger hunters.
We do, Mike. Thank you. We did come out. We saw a niche need for 4, 5, and 6X sizes. So we launched that last year, and we sold out all of our product. We got more sizes coming in, but that is really a need in our market is for the 4, 5, and 6X hunter. They just don't make product today. We've had guys come by that have been wearing the same clothing since the 70s because they cannot find new clothing in their sizes.
The website is versaskins.com, versaskins.com. Go there now. Save 40% through the first of the year. Paul, again, congrats on that big buck, and congrats on such a great concept, and now saving some money for hunters across the state. Paul Pirone, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mike. Have a very Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.
You as well. Paul Pirone, the guy behind the Versa Skins concept. You hear me talk about it all the time. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Go to the website, versaskins.com, versaskins.com, and save 40% now through the end of the year. We'll take a break. When we come back, Elliot Schaefer of the Michigan Wildlife Council right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK. That's 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. WTRX was the first affiliate radio station I ever had. The show started originally on a station in Saginaw called WMAX. It was sports talk. And at the time, it was a 1-hour show, a call-in show. It was a live show. And it was the concept was, well accepted, as you would expect in a state like Michigan that is so outdoor hunting and fishing oriented. And, we thought, well, let's grow the concept a little bit. And WTRX was the first affiliate station, the first, as we started to syndicate, and this has been 25 years ago. They were the first station to come on, so I'm glad to be on in Flint once again on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. You can also hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on on News Talk 1400 WKNW. The show now is on more than 30 stations, so the concept has really, really grown, and I appreciate that. By the way, this segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry since 1946. The company invented a product called Ferrule-Tite to glue broadheads to what at the time were, I guess, probably for the most part, wood arrow shafts, maybe some aluminum arrow shafts. I don't know, 46, that's been a long time, 76 years. These days, Boning continues to innovate, come up with new products for archers, target archers, bow hunters. And they're not resting on their laurels either. They've come up with some great manufacturing processes to continue to move into the future. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING.com, boning.com. We had planned to have Elliot Schaefer of the Michigan Wildlife Council on. He's not available. But thinking about that fact, and, talking about sports, WTRX and the radio show and such. I started Outdoor Magazine Radio back when I was still working at the local news station. I used to work at TV5, WNEM in Saginaw. That's been a long time now. I worked there for 11 years. And I started out there as a general assignment reporter. I actually started as a photographer, a videographer, worked my way into being a reporter. And I I didn't like the city council beat. I didn't like covering meetings. I didn't like that kind of stuff. I thought it was boring, and I still think it's boring. So I thought, okay, what areas could I work on? Okay, my dad was a cop. A lot of my friends were cops. So I started working the police beat, the cop beat. I had a background growing up on a farm, so I did the farm beat as well. And then the thing I really had a passion for, though, was hunting and fishing. So I started doing, hunting and fishing segments on the local news, and that was very popular. I thought, okay, if it's popular on television, maybe it'll be popular on radio as well. So I approached the folks at WMAX, and I got approval from my news director. Can I go out and do this? Because when you're working for somebody else, you got to get approval for everything. Thank goodness I'm not working for somebody else anymore. He said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So we did an hour-long local call-in show. And again, it was real popular. The show expanded down to WTRX in Flint. And a guy approached me. He said, hey, we've heard your show. Would you like to put it on a statewide radio network? And I went, holy cow, of course I would. So that started to open the door. I think we started out on maybe a dozen stations working at this network out of Charlevoix. And it was a very, very popular. Eventually, that network kind of went under or rebranded itself or reformed itself. I was approached by another network. This guy had been talking to me for a couple of years and said, look, I may be stupid, but I'm also very loyal, so I'm going to stick with this network. Well, when that network folded, or rebranded, it opened the doors for me to move over to the new network. That put me on like 19 or 20 stations right off the bat. That was a very good partnership. Eventually, that network kind of rebranded as well. But at that point, I was established enough. I was well known enough. The product was well received enough that I didn't really need a network to work under. So I started, in my mind, what I'm calling the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. Worked through a different distribution system, a satellite company, a distributor, that allowed me to get the show out to these different stations. Because just because I produce a show doesn't mean these other stations can pick it up. We've got to have a way to get it to them, whether it's a satellite or it's online, called an FTP, file transfer protocol type site. We've got to have a way of getting it out there. So long story short, now some 25 years later, the show is now on, at this point, it's on 33 stations across the state. And I'm pretty happy with our reach, pretty happy with our distribution. There are parts of the state that are not covered by the broadcast signal, but the podcast is out there. Podcasting is a wonderful thing. It allows me to reach the people that the radio show can't. So it's been a good ride. It's been an interesting ride. People say, when are you going to retire? Why? Why would I retire? I love what I'm doing. It's not physically hard. I'm not out putting shingles on roofs. I'm not out putting asphalt on a parking lot. And I love it. And so my plan is to continue to do this as long as I can. Now, my plans are not God's plans. I know that very well. But God willing, I'm going to be here for a while. And I appreciate your support. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, Tim Roller talks about hunting the late season, probably some steelhead fishing too.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. Heard on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. I say radio, I keep talking about this, and maybe it's for me as much as anybody, but I want to make the distinction between broadcast radio and podcasting. My radio show is heard on 33 radio stations across the state of Michigan. And I think the best way to listen, if you can, is on your local radio station. There you get your local news and weather and sports and commercials, ads. Maybe there's a sale you want to take advantage of. Maybe there's something you want to get here for the Christmas season, and this ad you hear on your local radio station will go, oh, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But if you can't hear Outdoor Magazine radio on your local radio station because maybe your local affiliate doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or maybe, gasp, you're not covered by the broadcast signal where you live. There are still some parts of our state where you can't hear the Outdoor Magazine radio show live on air. In cases like that, isn't it nice to know that there's a podcast version of the show available as a backup? You know podcasts. It's the hottest thing out there right now. I have people every week who say, hey, I was listening to your podcast, and I always say, well, where were you hearing? Because when I say podcast, I'm like, okay, did you hear it on the website? Did you hear it on Apple Music? Did you hear it on Spotify or whatever? They say, no, I was listening to, say, WSGW. I'm thinking, well, if you were listening on WSGW, that's not a podcast, that's a radio show. But it doesn't really matter to you, does it? That only matters to me. But it is nice to know that there's a podcast version of the show available, and you can hear it on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear it on the Facebook page. You can hear it on Amazon Music, on Audible, on Twitter, Apple Music, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Deezer, Odyssey, all of them. Anywhere you can hear a podcast, you can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I also do monthly podcasts for some of my partners, including Offshore Tackle, Primal Outdoors, Polar Craft Boats, and Angler Quest Pontoons. In fact, today when we're done here in the studio, Charlie Root and I will record this month's Angler Quest podcast with Mr. Angler Quest himself, Brad Dupuis. Regardless of how you are hearing my voice, of when you are hearing my voice, whether it's the radio show or the podcast, I do certainly appreciate it. Charlie was telling me that in 2 years I'll be celebrating my 25th anniversary working with WSGW. So when I said in the earlier hour of the show that I've been doing radio for 25 years, I was wrong. It's been 30. Time flies. One of the things that has made this ride so wonderful, and honestly seem like it's going by faster than what it really is, are, of course, the cool places I've had a chance to go, the cool things I've had a chance to do, and the wonderful people that I have been blessed to work with along the way. Tim Roller is one of those people. I first met Tim when we were doing a shoot for the old Outdoor Magazine TV show. We were steelhead fishing on the Manistee River. Tim was running Ultimate Outfitters, and we had a great trip. Now, Tim was very well known for his fishing expertise. In fact, one of his clients years ago caught a world record brown trout, a world record, not a state record, a world record brown trout fishing the Manistee River. Tim later became a pro staffer for the old Outdoor Magazine TV show. Eventually, he went on his own, did his own TV show, was very, very successful at that. Tim's had quite a ride himself, but throughout his journey, his whitetail journey, pun intended, and my broadcasting journey, we've stayed in touch. In fact, we've stayed friends. And that's why I always welcome the opportunity to have him back here on the show, and he's with us once again. Tim Roller, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you? That's quite the intro. A couple old guys just trudging along, aren't we?
Just a couple old guys trudging along talking about the outdoors. That's pretty much what this show is about. So how are you? What have you been up to? How was your fall season so far?
It's been really good. It's been fun. The fishing has been great. I'm back to. I got out of guiding, as you know, a number of years ago to concentrate on some other things, but I'm able to get back into fishing now, and so it was a great fall of fishing, and the hunting season has been equally as fun. It's been a great fall. Favorite time of the year.
Is it more fun to go hunting and fishing when you're not doing it as your job?
100%. And I think that's one of the things that people hear. I know you've gotten this, and I got it we did the TV show for 17 years. I had my guide service for 23 years. And the thing that I heard over and over was, wow, you have the dream job. And I could not refute that one bit. I did, but there's an awful lot to that people that aren't in it, as you well know, don't understand what goes into that. And when you become a fishing guide, you don't fish anymore. When you produce a television and outdoor television show specifically around hunting, it changes the entire dynamics of what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it. All of those things change completely. And that was a big eye-opener for me when I got into it. And we adapted to that. Obviously, it was part of the gig, if you will, and we had a great run with it. But to answer your question, yeah, it's completely different, and it's kind of almost like getting into it again for the first time. A lot of those feels that you appreciate more what you're doing and what's around you at any given moment, necessarily more than just trying to get the footage or we got to reshoot that or, know.
I know. And I see you, and I can relate to this a little bit, and that's why I have so much respect for hunting guides and fishing guides. I have my captain's license. I don't take paid charters out, but I do take a lot of people out for charity auctions who have, bid on a trip with me. And it changes things immediately. When you have people on board that you want them to catch fish, I feel it. It's always there until we get the first, a few fish in the boat. It's like, man, this is it. Because I don't do it for a living, I think I feel that even more so. But it really eats on me that you have to go out there and show these people a good time. I welcome that experience, but there is a certain amount of pressure there.
Oh yeah, and I think if there isn't, talking about at least from a guide's perspective, I mean, 23 years, I felt that every day.
Really?
And so I think if there isn't that, you might want to check what you're doing because if the emphasis isn't so much on your clients having the best day possible, why are you doing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way I approached it. I realized there was only certain things that I could control, and every single day there was going to be things that we just couldn't control. I couldn't control the weather. I couldn't control necessarily the abilities of the people that were coming up. I couldn't control the conditions, the fish bite, all those things. So I really had to have a handle and an intentional focus on what I could control and making sure they had the best day possible.
As you say that, I'm thinking that's a very good motto for all of us who enjoy hunting and fishing and interacting with Mother Nature. There are things you can't control, so work on the things that you can.
Yeah, it'll just make your day. I don't know. I think we're spoiled to a degree that we don't realize with what we have here in Michigan. And if you go out, I'll just say this. If my focus was, or if what determined me having a good day in the field was if I pulled the trigger or shot my bow or shot something, if that was the focus, man, I'd have an awful lot of bad days. And I think that's a bonus on top of it. I think we have unbelievable resources here. And I know from a guide, I had people travel from all over the world to experience the fishing here. And so I know I have an appreciation for what we have here, as I know a lot of your listeners do as well. And, it's not going to go every day like you hope it would. So there's no reason why we can't get out there and still enjoy it.
And I see these days, one of the ways you're enjoying it is through the eyes of your son.
Yeah, that's been a blast. So he's in college now, which is a big adjustment for all of us. Time flies. Anybody that has kids realizes that. And but he, I'm so fortunate because he's really taken a shine his whole life to the things that I'm passionate about. And so he's at an age now where we can really, really enjoy that stuff. He graduated from high school last year, and I told him I've been kind of planning for years. And I says, okay, dream fishing trip or dream hunting trip. And he wanted to go on a hunting trip. And so I've got a good friend of mine who is an outfitter out in Kansas. And we went out there this year on a bow hunt in November. And my son was able to kill a great buck on our third day there, biggest buck of his life. And his first Pope and Young deer almost scored. It was just under 140.
Wow.
And so just an awesome experience out there with him, making those memories. And it was. We absolutely love hanging out in the outdoors together.
A great story from Tim Roller. Got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, I want to talk more with Tim to get some late season whitetail tips. I mean, you might say, well, the season's over. Well, the official firearm season is over. Where I live, I can still hunt with my 350 Legend right until the first of the year. But the firearm season is over. There's still lots of great hunting out there, though. So I want to get some late season deer hunting advice from Tim Roller. And also talk about some late fall, wintertime steelhead fishing advice as well. I mean, he is the guy who pioneered, in my opinion, the early season tactic of casting crankbaits. We'll talk about that and more right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM and north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. As always, I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now. I always do. In fact, when we did our Wednesday night live at Dixie Dave's last week, people said, I can see your Rapid River knife, and they wanted to see it and hold it. And I said, yeah, these things really are something. When you hold a Rapid River knife in your hand, you know it's a quality piece of gear. And you open it up and look at it, these things are beautiful. Handmade by craftsmen in the UP. I would encourage you, if you can, stop by their showroom on US 2, just east of Rapid River, and check it out in person. If not, go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. There you can get a virtual tour of the showroom, and you can see examples of all the knives they make. Not just the folding knives that I always carry. Skinning knives, hatchets, axes, kitchen knives. They do a great job, and I love the fact they're made by hand by Michigan craftsmen. Again, check out the website, rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. I have made no secret about the fact I love this Michigan family we're all part of. I love this Michigan connection. I love working with Michigan-based companies. I love enjoying Michigan's natural resources. And I really love working with fellow Michigan outdoorsmen and women who share this passion for the outdoors. Tim Roller, certainly one of them. Tim has been on the outdoor scene here in Michigan his entire life. An expert hunter, an expert angler, in my opinion, as well. Tim, let's talk a little bit about this. Well, let's talk about late season whitetail hunting. How is it different than being out there, say, in early October?
Well, the number one thing is these, and I say these poor deer, but I mean, really, they've been pressured pretty hard now for, at this point, over 2.5 months. And so they're kind of walking on eggshells. But you also have a lot of things coming into play in the late season that, kind of put the odds back in your favor a little bit too, if you know how to use those. So, yeah, the biggest difference is the pressure. Things have changed that way, but the deer are actually getting back on patterns that a lot of times were the same when the season first opened.
What we're seeing, I say we got some lease property and we've got some food plots out there. The only activity we're seeing on the cameras is at night. They're coming in at nighttime, but we're not seeing it during the daytime at all.
And that's that pressure I was talking about. That's one of those things that you really, just kind of have to accept as a reality this time of the year. I've found over the years there's definitely ways around that, but boy, it can be hard, and you've really got to do. This is where homework, I think, throughout the year really comes into play. And the more options you have, the better. Some guys don't have a lot of options, and I remember being one of those guys. And so it really made me just study, I guess, for lack of a better word, and really be persistent. That's what it is. You got to put the odds in your favor as much as you can, and weather this time of the year is going to dictate that.
How so? How do we take advantage of or work with the weather?
Well, in your case, like you're saying, you've got a lot of nocturnal deer right now. the best thing you can do is not pressure them and try and give them as much space as you can. Let them realize that, okay, that whatever that food plot, that food source is that they're going to, because that's really, at this point, I mean, there are still some. I had a buck chasing a doe all like crazy the other night. But for the most part, that's done. You're going to see some does come back into heat that didn't get bred for the first time. But for the most part, these deer are back on, especially with winter conditions setting in, they're back on food. They got to replenish. They got to get ready for the bulk of winter that's ahead of them. So if you have access to food sources that you can hunt the deer using, the more you can stay off those and let them get comfortable in those and come in optimal conditions. Really pay attention to your entry and exit routes and pay attention to the wind. Don't push it this time of the year, because they don't need anything at all to just completely either vacate the area or, go so nocturnal that they're not going to come off it.
This second rut is interesting. I've heard about it and read about it for years, and I didn't really know what to think of it, but I had the opportunity to go on a track the other day with a guy, and as we were looking for this deer, the fresh rubs and scrapes I saw were pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's a real thing. I don't necessarily refer to it as a second rut. I think it's just a continuation. The bucks never really come off that. They understand, and there's a trickle effect that takes place. So, the bulk of breeding takes place in kind of like a 10-day window. But there's always does that are bred early on, early in October. There's does that are bred into December. And that's just God's way, nature's way, however you look at it, of making sure that there isn't some kind of catastrophic event that takes place in those 10 days and prevents the bulk of breeding or reproduction to take place. It's the same with fishing, right? There's a bulk time when spawning takes place for each species, but there's those shoulder times when fish are going to spawn outside of that bulk time, which protects in case something happens during that intense time. So there are a certain amount of does that don't get bred, and they'll cycle back in roughly 30 days. And that's kind of right where we are. This time of the month in December is you're going to have some of those does that didn't get bred the first time successfully. They'll cycle back in, and those bucks are still out there looking for any does that didn't get bred.
Well, let's talk about fishing. You bring that up. You, as I said earlier, I think you were a pioneer in promoting the concept of casting crankbaits for kings in the river and then also steelhead as well. But is that a warm water technique? Is that something you would do now?
You definitely can do it now. And guys have been plugging, what it's called, basically just putting rods in rod holders and having plugs in the river and letting the current take them and slowly backing down through runs. That's one of the best winter techniques there are. So those fish will come up and hit plugs. Casting them is no different. For me, I love the rod in my hand, so I want that I want to feel that. I want to reel that plug across and feel that fish hit. But it does change a little bit as the water conditions change, which is the temperature dropping. So that everything changes with that. The fish get a lot more lethargic, their metabolism drops, their activity level drops. They're not more apt to chase like they are when water temps are up earlier in the fall. So as far as technique of how you do it, yeah, that changes, but does that technique still effective? 100%.
So which is more of a factor, water level and flow or temperature?
It depends on time of the year. So temperature is not a really big deal early in the fall because it's where it needs to be, and it's going to be in that window for quite a while. But if you have low clear water in the fall, it's going to slow down that run of fish coming in, for example. We get any burst of rain in September, October, water goes up 6 inches, dirties up a little bit, a bunch of fish are going to push in, regardless of what the temperature is. This time of year, generally water is going to be pretty stable as far as height. It's not going to fluctuate a whole lot unless we tend to get a weird rain, one of those winter rains. But most of the time it's going to be snow now. Once that snow melts in the winter and the water comes up, that changes things. But for the most part right now, we're pretty stable with our water. Temperature is the big thing, and it's only going to go so low. We're approaching that level already right now. So water temperature right now is going to dictate more than anything where those fish are and what they're doing.
So in the colder water temps, where are you going to find them in the river versus earlier in the fall?
Man, and I wish I could tell you there's one specific answer to this, but there really isn't. There's so much depends on the river you're in, and basically that's just the structure of the river. You know, I'll give you examples of two of the bigger rivers in the state. So the Manistee River and the Muskegon River on the west side of the state. Completely different rivers. Both big rivers, but their makeup completely different. The Muskegon is just, you have these incredible 100, 200-yard runs where the depth never changes. It's just pebble stone on the bottom, and the fish sit in these little depressions, and that's what it is. The Manistee, you're lucky if you have 50 yards of bottom structure, especially as you get in the lower river. That's the same. It's a ton of sand, a ton of log jams. It's always changing because of the currents. There's dips, there's holes, it's just different structure. So, again, where those fish relate in those particular rivers is completely different. For the most part, though, they're going to be in places it's real easy for them to sit, doesn't expend a lot of energy, and places where you can watch the current seams and where those come together. All right? So they're sitting in places where food funnels to them, where they don't have to go to it.
Current seams, I'm thinking edges. And the more I talk to people, you know, who I consider experts in hunting and fishing, the term edges keeps coming up. Edges, difference in habitat, difference in water flow, difference in current. Edge is kind of a big deal, isn't it?
It's a big deal in anything you do. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, deer hunting edges are unbelievably important. In fact, I create edges. That's one of the things that I can do to funnel deer or make deer go where I want them to go. Edges are huge. It's the same thing with fishing, like you said. It's a little more difficult to define an edge or maybe find an edge in fishing because a lot of that's happening below you. Now, the electronics today are crazy. And they're continuing to get better and better where you can basically see whatever you want to. If you don't have that stuff, and when I was guiding, we didn't have any of that stuff. So learning to read the surface of the water and then just putting your time in and figuring it out as you're fishing, when you can find those distinct edges that funnel and create breaks for those fish, there will be money every single year.
Will water temp in the river vary from top to bottom, or is it consistent?
For the most part, it's consistent. You'll see those fluctuations on a bright sunny day, where your surface temp will warm up a few degrees in the winter. But depending again on the depth and the clarity of the water, how much of that gets down in the water column, it's not going to change a whole lot. Most of the time, at least in a river situation, you're going to have, again, depth is going to change that and dictate that a lot. But for the most part, you don't have that fluctuation.
Tim, I could talk with you about hunting and fishing, I think, for the entire 3-hour show, but we're pretty much out of time this week. But I do appreciate your insight and your input and your expertise. It's always a pleasure.
Mike, always a pleasure, buddy. I appreciate you. Thanks so much. Have a great Christmas.
All right, you as well. Merry Christmas to Tim Roller. Tim Roller, Whitetail Journey was the TV show. That's no longer on, but if you go out there, you can find some excellent video, I suspect on YouTube as well, of Tim's hunting and fishing adventures. Very knowledgeable guy. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Nick Green of MUCC checks in. We want to talk about a new change in leadership at the DNR and also the updated consent decree. Well, is it a decision at this point? We'll find out with Nick Green of MUCC right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister, 92.1 WTWS. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba on WCHT, 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. We had VersaSkins owner Paul Pirone on in the first hour. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Michigan-based VersaSkins, big sales now, 40% discount through the end of the year. If you go to the website versaskins.com, that's versaskins.com, You can get a 40% discount again through the first of the year. Great Christmas present. The late season's here. You're going to want to stay warm and dry and comfortable during this colder weather of the late season. And VersaSkins is a great option. Again, the website, versaskins.com, versaskins.com. Just change your skin for the season you're in. 40% discount now through the end of the year. With us now to try to bring me up to speed on what's going on, because I'll be honest with you, I like to think that I usually have a pretty good handle about what's going on in the outdoor news here in the great state of Michigan. I don't know. These last couple of weeks, maybe I've been living under a rock, or maybe I've just been out of touch, but things going on that I wasn't aware of. Nick Green, though, is with MUCC. He's their Chief Information Officer. Thank goodness I can always go to the folks at MUCC to get an update on what's going on out there. And Nick's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Listen, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realize that there was a change in leadership at the DNR.
Yeah, so with a new session and with elections and the governor being reelected, this quite often happens where there can be kind of a change among cabinet members. So Lisa Clark, who was the former director of the Environment of Great Lakes and Energy, has moved on. And in that interim, the DNR director, Dan Eichinger, will move over and act as the acting director for Eagle on an interim basis, is what we understand, until that position can be filled and some other things are worked out. And then current resources deputy Shannon Lott, so she's kind of the number 2 at the department. She's been with them for over 2 decades. She will step into the acting DNR director spot. And, for the conservation community, for hunting, angling folks, acting director Lott comes from the forestry world. She's been with Wildlife Division, Forestry Division. So she has kind of a good head regarding conservation issues, wildlife issues. We work with her closely. We have a great relationship. It's not something that we're worried about in the least, and we're excited to get working with her as soon as we can.
Ah, okay. So does this take place, first of the year? Take effect, I mean?
It does, yes. So it will officially start the first of the year. DNR Director Eichinger, current DNR Director, did preside over the Natural Resources Commission last week, and it's expected that next month in January that will be Acting Director Lott.
And you say at this point it is, I forget the word, but a tentative? Is there any reason to believe
an interim, yeah.
Interim, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's really unclear about, who she's looking to bring into her cabinet. Oftentimes these positions are national job searches. So sometimes they don't go fast, as you can imagine. So we'll just kind of wait and see. That's really what we know. And this was all in a governor's press release. We've had some closed door conversations since then, but we really haven't learned a lot other than we expect this to be on an interim basis. In that we are excited to work with Shannon Lott when she steps into the acting director role.
Well, I think about when Dan Eichinger was at the helm. Of course, you guys had a great relationship with him, or at least a very close working relationship, because he used to be at MUCC. Does the fact that Shannon comes from a DNR background as opposed to MUCC, is that a concern at all?
It's not, and I would say to even take a step back, while we were close with Director Eichinger and, we shared a lot of that same conservation-minded focus, MUCC is but one stakeholder in the world we play in. So when he went into the department, he also had to be careful to make sure that he was equitable and fair with everyone. Mm-hmm. So, we look forward to working with Shannon. We've had a great relationship. She's very responsive to our requests, calls. We actually have a Conservation Coalition meeting later this afternoon, and she will be in here talking with us for that. So, we have a good relationship. We have an open phone line. It's not anything that we are worried about. And in fact, given the interim basis, we don't expect much of the direction, good or bad, from the department to change.
Real quick before we go to this break, any thought that Dan moved along because there was dissatisfaction with how he was handling things? For example, the consent decree negotiations?
No, I would say that's not the thought at all and not anything that we've heard about.
All right, good. Nick, we got to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about the updated status of those consent decree negotiations now that you can talk about it, all right?
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
We're talking with Nick Green of MUCC, the website MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. Again, MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Club's kind of my go-to resource in Lansing when I have questions or want to get a little insight into what's going on, or in this case, just blatant updated information that I, for some reason, wasn't aware of, and it's all on me. I went to MUCC. You can as well. Go to their website, MUCC.org. Sign up to become a member there. If you're signing up for the first time, use the promo code Mike, all caps MIKE, and save 25% on what is already a very reasonable membership rate. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Holland on WHTC. That's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. You can hear us in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they want to work with you on your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. Now, the way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com with your question. This week, the question is about the consent decree negotiations regarding tribal fishing in the Great Lakes. Now, the last I had heard, so we've got Nick Green of MUCC along with us. He's going to answer this. But the last I had heard, Nick, I thought we were dealing with an extension of the old consent decree negotiations. Has that changed?
How quickly things can change. I think just a couple of weeks ago I was chatting with you about an indefinite extension until a successor decree was reached.
Yeah.
A proposed successor decree was submitted to the court a week ago Sunday, and it was submitted by the state of Michigan, federal government, and 4 of the 5 sovereign tribes. MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Clubs, is a member of the Coalition to Protect Michigan Resources, which is an angling kind of cohort of folks. It includes the Michigan salmon steelheaders, Hammond Bay anglers, and charter boat folks. We are opposed to the submitted decree. And, there's a litany of reasons that we are still trying to digest. This is over 100 pages of legal language that our lawyers are still trying to sift through. But of note are a massive expansion of gill nets in places such as East and West Grand Traverse Bay, the northern Lake Huron Lake Trout Refuge. These are areas that have not seen gill nets in decades. And in fact, we can look back to the late 1970s and see small boat tribal fishers come into the Grand Traverse Bay area and, deplete that lake trout fishery by 98% in one season. So it's not necessarily that gill nets are this thing that have never been used, because they are being used in our treaty waters of 1836, but they're not being used in these same locations that they could be if this decree is signed.
Well, you can't you can't have a northern Lake Huron lake trout
refuge
if you're going to be gill netting it. It kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's what we're grappling with right now. We've been on and we've been under a non-disclosure agreement through a lot of this, so we haven't been able to talk about much. But with this new proposed decree out, we are going to be talking, so folks need to pay attention. Like I said, gill nets are a big issue. There's also going to be an expansion of bycatch and keeping sport fish. So, for example, in some bays, there's going to be now those tribal fishers are allowed to keep up to like 15 pounds of walleye a day. So, while that may not sound like a ton daily, when you're talking about it over the course of a season, that could add up. there are, like I said, numerous other issues with this. The number one, issue that we're worried about is gill nets right now. The 2000 decree, which we had been operating under, had a gill net conversion program that spent over $14 million from taxpayers to buy gill nets from the tribes and replace it with commercial trap nets that we had bought from our state licensed fishers. That was a priority in the 2000 decree. In the underpinning of that was the rehabilitation of lake trout. In this new decree, the rehabilitation of lake trout almost seems like, it's been kind of dismissed or overlooked. And there certainly isn't the commitment to removing gill nets that caused such that population issue to start. So there's a lot of issues here to unpack and work through. We're just kind of doing it with everyone else at the start. But there will be more coming out in the weeks to come. The coalition that we are a member of will have a chance to submit our objections to the court. Those will be rather extensive, and we will share those with the public as soon as we have them ready. So
this is not a done deal yet?
This is not a done deal in terms of signed by the judge. However, 6 of the 7 parties that are a part of this decree have agreed to it. So the only party that is not is the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. They would like to self-regulate, not be included in any successor decree, which is a separate issue in and of itself.
DNR has signed off on it?
The DNR has signed off of it. They were one of the lead parties in these negotiations.
Can I just say publicly how disappointed I am to hear that?
I think we all are, Mike. I mean, I think, we had hoped that we could talk about this earlier and kind of help folks understand what could happen, what is happening. But right now we got to focus on what we can do in the meantime here. And we need some support from folks. We need them to contact DNR, contact the governor's office, let them know that, gill nets in your favorite fishing areas of the Great Lakes are not going to be okay.
Well, Nick, I wish it was better news, but I appreciate you bringing us up to speed on what's going on.
Thanks, Mike.
Nick Green of MUCC, the website MUCC.org. Keep an eye on that website and their Facebook page and your email. Look for news releases from MUCC on this. Very, very disappointing. Very disappointing. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, let's turn to something a little more uplifting. Let's talk about a little predator hunting. Primarily after dark with Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors. He's one of the best out there. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Tree Stands, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. Yes, indeed, my name is Mike Avery, also known as the Big Guy. Not nearly as big as I used to be, but I'm always going to be a big guy, right? I mean, I'm a big guy. It's just the way it is. It's kind of genetics kind of dictated that I would be a pretty good size guy, but I'm okay with that. So what have we talked about so far this week? We talked about the Michigan elk herd. We've talked about getting a great deal on VersaSkins. We talked a little bit about the history of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. We talked late season whitetail hunting and steelhead fishing with Tim Roller. Some really disturbing news from Nick Green of MUCC. I'm still shaking my head. I'm so disappointed that the DNR signed off on this whole consent decree situation that would and probably will put more gill nets out in the Great Lakes. Honestly. So let's talk about something that's more fun. Is there anything more fun than predator hunting? For the folks who do it, it's one of those things that's a passion. And I see this in my friends. I like my friends who are fly fishermen. Man, they get addicted to it. My friends who are musky fishing, they are so into it. My friends who are bird hunters, it's like a lifestyle. Predator hunters are the same way. And there's not a better one out there that I know of than Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors. Check out their Facebook page, Overdrive Outdoors. They've got like more than 50,000 people following that page to keep an eye on Josh and his hunting partners because they're so good at what they do. Josh can be a hard guy to get in touch with, but I managed to nail him down this week, and he's with us here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show to share some of his expertise. Josh, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you, sir. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing real good, and based on the pictures you've been sending me, your season's doing pretty good too.
It's been a heck of a deer season, but yeah, now I'm starting to transition back over to the coyotes.
How is deer hunting and coyote hunting, how are they alike or how are they different?
Well, the biggest thing is a lot of them, like deer and coyotes, you've got to know where they're at to hunt them, right?
Yeah.
There's no point in going to sit in a tree stand where there's no deer. It's kind of like going out and trying to call a coyote where nobody's ever seen one before. So, pinpointing their locations is like the biggest similarity. And I do a lot of scouting for deer season while I'm summertime, daytime coyote hunting. Basically, I'll hunt clear cuts and stuff like that where the deer like to bed, and at the same time, I'll call coyotes out of that same cover. So in a lot of ways, they're looking for a lot of the same cover. They're looking for safety. They're looking for ways to get around without being noticed. And, those two kind of go hand in hand that way.
Well, while we're still kind of on a deer hunting topic here, how in the world did you go out on state land and shoot like a half a dozen big giant does this fall? What's the secret there to doing this on public land?
Part of my secret is I use a lot of other hunters to my advantage. When I'm out scouting, I'm on my HuntWise maps, and I will pin other people's tree stand locations so I know where people are hunting, because 9 times out of 10, those guys are going out to the same tree stand every time they go out. And I am a mobile hunter. So this year I transitioned into saddle hunting. So I never leave a tree stand anywhere. I never go back to the same spot, hardly ever. And I spend a lot of time scouting. I think my brother-in-law and I in November had walked something over 60 miles just wandering around looking on public land and hunting. And I just got lucky this year. This has been the best year I've ever had in the deer woods. But, once you start finding those feed trees, like especially now finding the oaks and having some snow on the ground, I still got 2 tags in my pocket that are going to be used on more mature does if I find them. I don't think luck is
involved when you're out there in the woods, Josh. I think it's all skill.
There's a lot of time invested and a lot of years. I'm 34 now, so I've been hunting for 22 years and kind of just, this is what I love to do. So when you live and breathe it, you just got to learn the best ways to do it.
You mentioned saddle hunting too. Now that's not something that I personally am going to get involved in at this point in my life, but I do find this concept very interesting. It's something that Johnny Eberhardt started talking about years and years ago, but man, lately it's just really taken off.
Well, and for me being a mobile hunter, I've been a mobile hunter since 2017, and I started with a hang-on and sticks. And I think carrying all my camera equipment and stuff, I'm still carrying over 30 pounds. Well, transitioning to a saddle, I wear the saddle in, and it weighs, 3-4 pounds on my butt walking in. So I've dropped my pack weight quite a bit, and setting up in that is pretty easy, pretty quick. The only thing I don't like about it is those offhand shots, So if you're a right-hand shooter like I am, and a deer comes over to the right-hand side of the tree, that's your weak side shot. And that's a harder shot to get off. But, being mobile and being able to be that light walking in and setting up, it's awesome. I love doing that, and I never look at the same spot, more than once or twice in a season. So you're always looking at new land that way, too.
One last question on this deer hunting topic before we move on. What's your advice for late-season hunters, folks who are still out there now? They're hunting deer that have been hunted for 6 weeks, 2 months, or whatever now. It can be pretty tough.
Yeah, put your walking boots on and scout. Like I said, especially with snow on the ground, it's very easy to find where these deer are going to feed, and that's how I killed my 2 with the gun during gun season. When we had snow on the ground, I'd just look for their feed trees, and I knew kind of off of summer scouting where the bedding was, so I would just wait outside that bedding for them to come into those feed trees, and that's how I got my two gun season does. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on this coming weekend. I'll be going up north, and there's supposed to be some snow on the ground, so we're going to spend some time scouting, and I might only get 1 or 2 hunts actually in, but you got to find those trees, you got to find those spots where those deer want to be, and you should be in them. The sign in the snow doesn't lie. And
are you going to state land again, public land?
Yes, sir. Yep, I'll be up there in Manistee Forest doing some public land bow hunting.
So will you be hunting coyotes at night then?
That's my goal. I've actually got a post on our Facebook page right now looking to see if any private landowners up that way would allow me to come onto their field for just a night. But I'm going to look at some state land spots and see if there's anything open enough to nighttime hunt, because up there we are legal to use the centerfire rifles at night on public lands. So I want to go do that while I'm up there and see if I can't get my cousin on a coyote or 2.
Josh Mapes, do you ever sleep?
Not very often.
See, that's the problem with this whole nighttime coyote hunting. It cuts into your sleep.
It does, definitely. I mean, the other night I was out, and I sent you the picture of those 3, and I think I got home around midnight that night. Been coming to work extra early so I can get out early enough to go into the deer woods that night. But, yeah, the older I get, it gets a little bit tougher. I mean, we can watch Randy Booty out there all night long, and he don't seem to slow down at all. But I don't know. I'm 34, starting to slow down, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, Randy's like an Iron Man. He's like a triathlete of coyote hunters.
Dang good guy, and he's a coyote hunting fool, too, so.
Yeah, he certainly is. We've had Randy on the show before. I always enjoy talking with guys like you and Randy, and people who are really, really good at what they do, because it takes a certain mindset to get from, okay, I can do this and I'm average, to taking it to the next level. It takes a commitment, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely does.
Time, money, sleep.
Lots of both. Lots of all 3. There's been, a couple of years ago, there would be nights where I would go after working a full day. I would go start coyote hunting right after the sun went down, and I wouldn't come back home until the sun was up the next morning. I don't do that so much anymore unless it's during the tournament, and we're kind of slowing down on those 2.
Why go out after dark? Why not just go out there in the daytime?
Well, I do a little bit of both. Daytime hunting, it takes a lot more knowledge in that aspect of where they're going to be. Like, when I go out daytime hunting, when I'm out at night, I'll stand in the middle of a wide open field. My gun's on a tripod. As long as it's dark and you don't do too much movement, try to find something to cover your backdrop. They'll run right to you. I've shot them at inside 10 yards standing in a wide open field in the middle of the night. Now, in the daytime, them coyotes, for as long as I've deer hunted in daylight, I think I've seen a total of 7 coyotes ever, and I shoot way more than that at night in a year. But daytime hunting, you got to find that better cover. They're a little bit more adamant to move, and as long as you can kind of give them everything they want, which is the wind being in the right direction, but not setting up to where they're going to get your wind before you ever see them. I shoot a lot of them in daylight with a shotgun in clear cuts within 20 yards because that's where they want to be. They're not afraid to be running through those clear cuts in daylight, but getting them out across a wide open field, it's doable, but it's 10 times easier to do at night than it is in daytime.
Josh, hang tight. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. We're talking with Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors. You can find him on Facebook and on YouTube as well. These guys do a great job in helping to knock down the coyote population. After the break, first question I'm going to have for Josh is why hunt coyotes? I grew up in and this is devil's advocate question, right? I grew up in a family that's like, you don't shoot something you're not going to eat. Most people won't eat coyotes, so why are we hunting them? I think I know the answer in my mind, but I want to hear that from Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us in the Yoop in Manistee on WTIQ 1490 AM and 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Hunter Safety System. There's still some time left. You're going to be up a tree, right? And then, unless you're hunting with a saddle like Josh Mapes is, I strongly recommend you wear a full body harness. Now, I bring it up now because I think it's a great Christmas present. If there is a tree stand hunter on your list and they're going up a tree without a full body harness on, for one thing, I think it's very selfish of them to do that. But as you, the person who has a tree stand hunter in your life, I think maybe the best thing you can buy them for Christmas is a Hunter Safety System full body harness. They come in a sizes to fit everybody, a bunch of different designs. I mean, Hunter Safety System was the first company to do this. I've known these people for a long time. I've worked with them for a long time. They were the originator of the category, and in my opinion, still the best. Check them out online at huntersafetysystem.com. That's huntersafetysystem.com. We're talking now with Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors about predator hunting here this time of year, primarily predator hunting after dark. Josh, you heard me pose the question before the break, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, okay? This is not a true criticism because I support what you're doing, but I think it's a valid question. If you're not going to eat these coyotes, why do you hunt them?
Well, to start off, for clarity, I have eaten coyote.
Okay.
It is not delicious. The ways I've had it, it was not something I'd keep putting on my menu. We've had it a couple different ways, and there's been a couple different ways that have been edible, just not my favorite. I used to tell people I do it because we need to control the population, which that is still true. With fur prices and everything going down, I mean, just like raccoons, there's not nearly as many people trapping as there used to be because you can't get anything off the furs. I have a whole chest freezer in my garage full of skinned coyote fur that I can't even give away to anybody. Nobody wants them anymore. My biggest reasons, to be honest, Mike, number one, I love it. And number two, I love meeting the landowners that let me hunt their property. I hunt thousands of acres of private land, and the landowners that I meet is probably my favorite part of it anymore. I mean, I love the hunt, but I love having those connections and those friends. People shake my hand and let me go hunt 3,000 acres of property, and they trust me on it. Hearing coyotes, I love hearing them. I don't have to shoot them to enjoy my time out there. Shooting one or two, makes it all the more worth it. But anymore, I'm a hunter, and anything that I can hunt and be out there hunting, that's where I want to be.
Why do these landowners invite you on? Why are these coyotes a problem in in a lot of areas?
Well, a lot of what I do is for dairy farmers. I actually just had a lady last week contact me, and she was having coyotes come in and take her ducks right off of her pond. And I believe, she has those ducks as pets, basically. And that's a lot of it is the predation part. Especially right now, people start to call more because we're coming into the breeding season. So when people start having dogs that are going outside to go to the bathroom and a coyote smells it, a lot of times those people call me and say, hey, the coyotes are getting right up by the house. And that happens more and more this time of year into, March, April, when they're still looking for mates. They're coming around these houses. And there's a lot of people that, they don't mind them when they're, a mile away howling. But when they're right in their backyard messing with their own animals, they don't want them anymore. And that's a lot of who we work with is people like that.
And coyotes are everywhere these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go back to nighttime hunting. When I first started talking with people about predator hunting after dark, it was with the use of high-powered lights to light them up. You guys have gone way beyond that now, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, you can still kill them off of lights, but as much as we do this, and as many people, these landowners kind of rely on me to take care of this problem. I got landowners that don't care one way or the other. Just come out and hunt them. If you get them, cool. If you don't, cool. Come try again later. But I've also got some that, if I'm not getting the job done, then there's no reason to have me there. And as much as I love to hunt, and as often as we do this, it was worth the price of getting all these thermal setups. And, if you've seen my videos on YouTube, we're trying to make better videos now. So you got multiple camera angles, all that kind of stuff that you're dealing with. Man, I kind of forgot your question there now, Mike.
I kind of forgot it too, actually. Going back to, can you still kill them just using a bright light?
Oh, yeah, absolutely you can. And there's still a lot of people, that is how we would recommend doing it. There's a lot of people that will jump right in, throw all hands on deck, $10,000 in thermals and guns and blah, blah, blah. And within a couple months, well, we're selling all this. This just isn't what we thought it would be, blah, blah, blah. They're getting rid of all their stuff. Well, you can get into a Predator Hunter Outdoors, a night snipe light for under $200, and you've got everything you need right in that kit to go out and start hunting. As long as you've got a legal rifle for Michigan, you can go hunting with that. A lot of people, I use a 243, and a lot of people use a 243 for deer, so if they've already got one, they've already got what they need to hunt. I do encourage everybody to go look at Michigan Predator Hunters for Centerfire at Night Facebook page for all the rules on caliber restrictions and land types where you can hunt with that. But, yeah, absolutely. If you want to get into it for cheap, get into a light kit and start that way, because thermal is not going to make you a better hunter. You still have to learn how to hunt them. You have to learn where they're going to be, how they approach a call, how to set up, and having high-end equipment doesn't make you better at that. It just helps. Once you've gotten to be good at it, it helps make you even better. But, we started with lights, and we killed a lot of coyotes that way, but as much as we do this, it was just worth it for us to jump all in. And, none of us have any plans on stopping hunting coyotes anytime soon.
Josh, I'm a little surprised to hear you're hunting with a 243. I figured you'd be in something, far more exotic than that.
Oh, no. I got my first 243. My wife bought me that for our very first Valentine's Day a long time ago. And I've been a 243 shooter for a long time. I did shoot a 22 Nosler from Brenton, USA for, I think, a year or two. And it just didn't have the knockdown power I want. When I shoot a coyote, when I shoot any animal, my goal is to make that animal dead as quickly as possible with as little amount of suffering as possible. So I shoot a 70-grain Nosler. I believe it's a Nosler ballistic tip out of that 243. And typically, if I do my job, you can see it on our videos on YouTube, they do not go anywhere, and, there's no suffering, no running involved. No tracking, and I can just go get them and bring them to the truck.
Your wife bought you a 243 for Valentine's Day. God bless her.
Lady.
What about, do you, now, when you call, you're gone probably way beyond a mouth call. You're using an electronic caller at this point, right?
Yeah, I've got mouth calls that I always have on my lanyard. So I have a lanyard around my neck at all times. It's got a thermal monocular on it. So if anybody doesn't understand what thermal is, it's basically seeing anything hot. A coyote, a deer, a mouse. We can watch anything with a body temperature above the ambient temperatures moving around in the middle of the night where nobody else would ever see them. So I'm scanning with a thermal monocular around my neck, and that's got two hand calls. It's a Green Nasty and another one from Tony Tebby down in New Mexico. And I use those occasionally, but usually it's if I have already packed up at the end of the set and then all of a sudden I see or hear a coyote. A lot of times I'll just pick up the hand call and start calling on that. But, yeah, I prefer an electronic call just because when they're coming into a hand call, you at that point are the source of the sound. So they're coming in and they are looking for or directly at you while you're calling. When I'm calling with an electronic call, I can guide them kind of to where I want them to be. If I use the wind direction correctly and I assume they're going to try to go downwind, I can guide them to a spot with an electronic call that will allow me to get a shot. And, I'll put the call out 30, 40, 50 yards, and those coyotes aren't looking at me coming in. So that's another advantage, when we're standing out in these wide open fields, getting the call away from you so they're not staring at you coming in. It's really effective that way.
Do you use a decoy?
I do not. I've carried a coyote decoy, like a full-body coyote, a couple times, and to tell you the truth, I carry enough stuff that I just don't like carrying all that.
I've heard about some people, though, use a little moving tail, a rabbit tail or something, to look like a prey animal out there.
Yep. We've used those before, and to be honest, we will still use them occasionally in daylight. The biggest problem with using a decoy is we call in so many owls that you will have your decoy stolen right off the top of your call by an owl. We've had that multiple times. I've had an owl swoop down, grab a decoy, fly off across the field, and then drop it, and you have to go over there and try to find it. And at that point, it's like needle in a haystack.
Wow, that's pretty funny. What about fox or bobcat? Are you guys into those predators at all?
Yeah, fox, they have a closed season. Right now they're open, but it's like October 15th or I believe March 1st. Don't quote me on that. Look at the book. Anytime outside of that, it's pretty much hands off unless you're a permit holder by the DNR, which is a lot of the nuisance predator control people in the state. I have people call me during the summer and say, hey, fox are coming in and taking my chickens. What can I do? Legally, nothing. Unless you get a DNR biologist to come out, look at the damage, and possibly write you a permit, which from what we've heard, most of the times they're not going to write you a permit. They're going to tell you to lock up your animals a little bit better so that fox can't get in and take them. A lot of my landowners, like the one I mentioned earlier that said she was having ducks taken off her pond, I suspect that to be fox, but she does not want me to shoot the fox because she likes watching the fox.
There you go. Fair enough, right? So, landowner makes the decisions. Josh, listen, exactly. I got to let you go. It's always a pleasure talking with you. Keep up the good work. Keep sending me those pictures. I will post them on my Facebook page. I would encourage people to go to the Overdrive Outdoors Facebook page and the YouTube channel as well. Josh Mapes, always a pleasure. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. Lots more coming up, including... We'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here today on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Tawas on WIOS, AM and FM, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. In fact, you can hear the show twice each weekend on WIOS. You can also hear us in Saginaw on WSGW, 790 AM and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now, as I am every week. This is where we record the show. I've got one very small corner of one studio. In fact, if I put my arms out side to side, I could almost reach both sides of the studio. But this is all we need. Actually, it's a very nice studio. I'm in here with Charlie Root. Charlie, an icon in the broadcasting business in the Saginaw area. He doesn't look like he's been in broadcasting very long because he's a young-looking guy. But he's been in it how many years, Charlie?
42.
42 years. Over like 40 years, like 4 decades. And he's very well known, as I say. Even on a cold, blustery, overcast day today, people are lined up. They're waiting for him to leave. They don't know that he's going to be in here longer than usual today because he's going to be here with me to record the Angler Quest Pontoons podcast. So there's people out there going, Charlie, with their signs. They're going to have to wait a while. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it. Always appreciate your help. Couldn't do this without you guys, you and Pat Johnston. Really couldn't do it without the listeners, you folks listening. If you weren't there, this whole thing would be for naught. I also have to thank, too, my friends from Reader Landscaping for helping to make the show possible. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature. And our nurture let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard and take care of the getaway that you already have. It is not, believe it or not, it is not too early to get yourself on the list for springtime projects with the folks at Reader Landscaping. And in the meantime, if you want them to take care of your snow removal, they can help you with that as well. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. Speaking of snow, in my part of the state, it's been kind of interesting. We had that snow for the opener of the firearm deer season. And then after that, really, a little bit here and there, but not so much. Now, they are calling for snow here between now and the time you hear the show, so we'll see what happens. But it's been an interesting late fall so far. I did enjoy that conversation with Josh Mapes of Overdrive Outdoors. We were talking about fox. He is primarily a coyote hunter. But I asked him about fox and bobcat. We had a fox in the backyard the other day. And I was actually able to get a picture of it. So I sent it around to some of the neighbors and said, hey, we had a visitor. This is not the first wildlife visit. And I live in town, on the edge of town, but in town. We've had coyotes wandering through there. Last year, I think it was, I was out on one of my early morning walks and a coyote ran between two houses right in front of me. This fox, turns out, has been kind of a regular in the neighborhood. I've only seen him once in the neighborhood. I've seen him out in the fields. Other people have seen him with cats in his mouth. They've seen him with rabbits in his mouth. And I do know that our resident rabbit population is way down. I wish he would go after some of those geese, knock some of that population down. But that's just me and my personal vendetta against geese. Let me see what else is on my list here. Again, I've got to go back to the word about the consent decree negotiation update. Again, I walked into the studio this morning, and I'm embarrassed to say this. I did not realize that a new DNR director had been appointed effective January 1st. I still thought it was going to be Dan Eichinger. It's not. It's Shannon Lott, who was the number 2 person there. I didn't know anything about it. But actually, Charlie was doing some research here in the studio, too, to a Google search, and he said there wasn't much said about it. But still, it is my job to know about such things, and I didn't, and I apologize. I also, again, I'm embarrassed to say, I did not realize that the new consent decree negotiation decision had basically been made. Because as far as I knew, and this was pretty recent information, we were still dealing with a continuation of the previous negotiations. But now Nick Green of MUCC comes on and says, no, everything's changed. And in the new guideline, the new framework, we're talking millions of feet of additional gill net in the Great Lakes. And I gotta be honest, the thing that disappoints me the most, not that the tribes want to do this, I don't blame them for doing whatever they can. I'm so disappointed that I would think an organization that should be in place to defend recreational anglers, you and I, and charter boat anglers, that the DNR signed off on this. Now, I'm sure as I learned more about this, there was so much going on behind the scene that maybe they were backed into a corner, and this was a lesser of 3 or 4 evils. I don't know. But at first blush, it just seems very disappointing to me that an agency that I think would be an advocate for sport anglers would sign off on an agreement that in theory and in practice, if you look at it previous years, could decimate fisheries in a given area. And unfortunately, even though technically it's not a done deal, it's not looking good. We'll take a break. When we come back, wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. I really do mean that. I wouldn't be able to do this without your support by following me on social media, by listening to the radio show, by listening to the different podcasts. And I enjoy this. I consider it a blessing. In some ways, I really feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing at this point in my life, but it depends on you to make it happen, and you've helped to do that. So thank you very, very much. Also, I got to thank Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, who hosted us at Oscar and Joey's Roadhouse on a recent Wednesday Night Live. It was our last Wednesday Night Live in person at the restaurant, and I thought it was a rousing success. Chef Dixie Dave Minar, did you feel the same way?
I had a ball. I think it went about as smooth as anything could possibly go.
It was just nice. I mean, we packed the restaurant. Everybody was there to enjoy some great food and enjoy, and kind of congratulate you on all your years of being in the business. Was it, Dave? Was it bittersweet? Has it hit you yet that you're actually going to retire?
8 days.
But who's counting, eh?
All right, I know, but it turned more into a retirement party, I think, than a Wednesday Night Live.
Well, that's kind of what I had in my mind, a Wednesday Night Live celebrating Dixie Dave. So I think it was great. I think so, too, boy. Thanks a lot, Mike. And I want to appreciate everybody. And the gentleman gave me that cutting board, the Michigan style-looking cutting board. I want to thank him for that. That was just great. Who was that? Was that I didn't see that. Was that Dave Sapansky?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dave's a great guy.
And
great
then
guy.
Doug and Chris gave me a real nice Deming. I mean, they gave me a real nice card, and I got a couple more cards, and it was just hitting home hard and heavy that night. And I'm getting used to the fact that I'm not going to be going back, I guess.
Well, and it was nice to see so many friends.
Still catering.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, but it was nice to see so many friends there. Like Doug and Chris Deming, I hadn't seen them for a while. Fred Post was there. I hadn't seen him for a while. Yeah. It was really nice. I
think so, too. I really appreciate what you've done, Mike. Thank you so very much.
Well, it's been my pleasure, but you say you're not done. You do want to do some catering. Tell me more about that, Dave.
Well, what I'd like to do, as long as we can come up with organizations that have a kitchen that I can use and maybe get in a day or so early, I'd be more than happy to take care of whatever needs they have. Say like churches want to do a fundraiser or some kind of, maybe like Ducks Unlimited or some of them things. And I talked to Al Herman about, he's the NRA, Friends of NRA representative, and he said he was going to check around and see if anybody needed catering. As long as there's a kitchen there, then I should be able to knock off, hundreds of people, 300-400 would be no problem, because I still have my trailer and all my catering equipment.
Well, and for so many years, Dave, you've been so generous with your time and helping out these I don't want to say all of them have been charitable organizations, but you really go out of your way to help with the different charities on fundraisers, like our Trinity Monitor, my church wild game dinner coming up in March. It's a huge draw because Dixie Dave is cooking the dinner.
It's just one of them things. I feel kind of obligated. Maybe it would be, I don't know what word you use, to help these folks out. They came to me looking for guidance and also to try to help them make some money. So, it's not that I'm trying to make a killing off of some of these people at all. Just the fact that they chose me to do this. And I'm going to bust my butt and get right out there, and I'm going to do the best possible job I can for the most economical way for them, so that they can make their money too.
So listen, if somebody is looking at a fundraiser for a church group or a conservation group or whatever, I think maybe the best way to do this is have them, get in touch with me, Dave, and then I'll put them in touch with you. Is that all right?
That would be, because I don't know how much longer we're actually going to have a phone at the restaurant, and I'm going to put on the answer machine, call my cell phone, so on and so forth like that. But getting in touch with Mike for some of this stuff would be the very best way.
All right, so send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, and I can put you in touch with Dave. Listen, the number for the restaurant is 989-624-9349, but as Dave said, we don't know how much longer that's going to be into effect. So give me an email, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And Dave, you and I have worked many events together, and every one of them, people have raved about your food. They said, "Oh, this is so great. This is so interesting. This is so unique. I'm so glad we went this route."
You know, we've tried. I have trapping friends and stuff like that. Them guys, they always try to save me the most wholesome animals like that, like beaver and coyote and bobcat and otter, you know, things of that nature that most people are not going to go out of their way. I just happen to have all of these connections through your show, basically.
Well, we're going to be able to talk. We're going to continue to talk. So even though the restaurant isn't there, you and I are going to wrap up each week's show talking about cooking wild game, correct?
Absolutely. As long as you'll have me, I'll be there every Wednesday.
David, you are welcome on this show as long as I'm around. Wild game chef extraordinaire, Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. As I said earlier, if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this. And I really am, I'm kind of attached to doing this. I've been doing it long enough. I want to continue to do it for a long time. My name is Mike Avery. My email address is mikeavery@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And my website is mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.